we get into this morning, firstly, welcome to our latest Granite Keynote event. The topic this morning is the intersection of corporate and personal branding, and we're delighted to welcome Alex and Anne-Marie from Seek here this morning. So Anne-Marie, previously in New Zealand with Seek as marketing manager, is now product manager within the Melbourne head office, specialising in communications and public relations. Alex runs product marketing, so is head of product marketing at Seek. He's got extensive experience across both business and consumer sectors. So we've prepared a number of questions to put to the panel. As we go through, please feel free to ask other questions, argue, dispute, discuss, as normal with this group.
Be nice though.
Yeah, but first of all, I'll hand over to Alex.
Sure. So in terms of introductions, you've kind of covered that off. What we'd like to talk today is the importance of company and personal branding. They're often disputed in terms of which is more important than the other, where they stand, how they complement each other, and so today we'll thrash out that topic. David's got some questions that he's going to throw at us, obviously, and we're very open to any from any of you guys as well. So healthy conversation, just to keep things moving.
Good stuff. So I'll get things started. How would you describe where marketing is heading today, especially the rise of new marketing? And also, how do you define new marketing?
Yep. So where marketing has come from, what we saw once upon a time, and we're talking over the last sort of 50 years, the evolution of marketing has gone from this inherent trust of large brands by virtue of them being a large brand. A very divisive example of that would be tobacco, when they used to tell people, smoke because it's good for you, and people believed that because they were a brand and they were a big brand and they had no other reason to question them. There was no level of transparency around what businesses like that did, what it meant for the consumer, and therefore nothing was questioned. And over time what's happened is that these big brands have no longer had the authority by virtue of just being a big brand. We've seen a level of transparency that's come out of the consumer when you look at things like TripAdvisor, that really unearths within the hotel industry what providers actually give their consumers, whether they're quality products and whether they're quality services. The consumer now has a voice that they've never had in the past, and they have a very present voice that's out in market that costs them nothing to voice, that gets massive reach, and as a result the big brands are no longer trusted like they once were, and I think that's very true for a lot of big companies. You see things like oil spills from BP that have happened, and the lack of trust that is now inherent in a lot of our big brands by virtue of those types of incidents. They get massive reach around the world, and as a result people don't trust them. So the rise of new marketing has really seen things like social activity come online and now start to be a forum in which the customer really has a voice.
I've actually observed recently, sugar's almost become the new tobacco, right?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And it will continue to be. And when you see how tobacco has kind of evolved into this sort of nothing product and continues as legislation goes, that is the effect of the consumer saying this is not right, governments need to act. And they're doing that because they have such a voice with such a reach out in public. So it's a very good example, and it will continue to happen.
And in terms of storytelling, why is this such a strong strategic approach?
Yes, so storytelling, it's interesting when you kind of go back to when you're a child. Your parents told you stories because it was something that stuck and they were true and they were believable. Storytelling is very powerful because when you think about big brands and the way that they talk about their brand, it's very much a voice to you. It's a one-way dialogue. It's not a conversation. The power of storytelling is that it's very authentic. It's someone usually sharing something about themselves, and as a result it becomes a dialogue. And the value of that for a big brand is that you draw affinity with your clientele, you draw affinity with your customer base, where they understand what you stand for, and they start to entertain dialogue with you. And by virtue of that, you are starting to really engage your audience in a very different way. You're not telling them that they should be buying your product. You're telling them what you do and what you stand for. And when you couple that with a really strong purpose from an organisation, storytelling becomes a really powerful thing in which a big brand or even a small brand or even a recruitment agency can use to really relate to the clients that they're talking to.
So what advice can you give, us all in the room today, that how we can use storytelling to, help develop our careers?
So it might actually be worth, we've got some examples that they're examples of big brands. One is in fact NAB, and they're good examples because they demonstrate how a very big brand can actually become quite authentic by telling often quite intimate and personal stories at a broad level that will really relate to their audience. So we might start off with the NAB example if we can.
If you think about it, believe that there's been collusion between the banks, that they simply follow each other with all their fees, that there's been no real competition between them.
This all actually started on Friday with what looked like an accidental tweet from a NAB employee. It read, "So stressed out, have to make a tough decision, and I know I'll probably hurt someone's feeling.
Well, no one likes to receive a Dear John letter announcing a breakup, especially when it's published in the papers for the world to see.
The NAB has written an open letter.
A relationship breakup letter.
Dear CommBank, ANZ and Westpac.
Honestly, it isn't you, it's me.
This letter today is astonishing, Wendy.
I can't be around you anymore. Enjoy your ride.
Oh, yeah, right. Good riddance. I think I'll get my
Nowhere was safe from the blitz by the newly single NAB. NAB's launching a full-scale attack on its competitors.
The NAB is telling its rivals their relationship is over. There was even a piano man singing broken love songs outside the ANZ headquarters.
The Sky, the Street and the Net were all bombarded with messages of breakups.
This is the biggest thing we've seen in banking for a long, long time.
The other three big banks are filthy, absolutely livid with the NAB right now.
Consumers stand to save tens of millions of dollars.
This has got to be good for Australia.
Yours sincerely, NAB.
So as you can see from some of those stats at the end there, things like $5 million worth of earned media is pretty amazing, and that barely ever happens in a marketing campaign. Often you'll spend $5 million and get very little traffic back. So as you can see from that, a whole range of different initiatives, and in terms of, as I said before, in terms of what they had previously spent on campaigns, it was a drop in the ocean to execute a lot of that stuff.
Moving on then, if we talk about corporate versus personal branding, what are some of the key differences between the two?
So, I mean, as you can see from that, it's a good example of corporate branding that's really quite disruptive and has gone quite right. I think corporate branding is very much the beacon out to the market of what that organisation stands for. For an organisation to have a very well articulated purpose, and for it to be an articulated purpose that goes out to market, that is what its brand should and often does represent. The personal brand is exactly that, the individuals within that brand that make up that corporate brand.
So I know traditionally people have maybe, kept, work to one side and personal stuff to the other. So have you noticed more of a merging of the two? Clearly we're talking about, professional personal branding today, but or predominantly around that. But have you noticed the convergence of the two and people being more intertwined?
I think definitely, as you see the advent of social media channels really starting to bring a person's personal brand into the public arena, that naturally transgresses into their working life. And when you look at, even something like Seek, it's very much about what is the personal brand, how does that personal brand enrich their day-to-day life, both in work and both in personal. There's definitely a crossover now. What differentiates a person, and you would know this well and truly in terms of placing candidates, what differentiates a person is that their personal brand and how they bring something different to the table.
So what are some of the strategies that people can adopt for developing their personal branding?
So I think certainly for personal branding, it really comes back to, for a company, it comes back to what's the company's purpose and how do they really articulate that out into the market. I think the same thing applies to a personal brand. I think understanding what your individual purpose is, what you're trying to achieve, and therefore how you need to present yourself out into market is absolutely how you're going to enrich your personal brand. And there'll be a set of goals that you obviously need to hit as a result of that, but understanding what I'm here to achieve is ultimately going to enrich your personal brand and identify the things that you then need to go about achieving underneath that.
And presumably with us all having access to more and more information, products such as the new the talent search product, the Seek's version of LinkedIn are, particularly relevant as people are less likely to look for, in this case, a job, on a job board. Then they become more a case of getting the brand out, and then people are finding them.
Definitely, definitely. And it's as we've launched that product, we've really started to see that people have engaged with proactive search to find candidates far more frequently. And so the value of having a profile that works for you and an understanding of what that profile is trying to convey out, much like your CV once did, and making sure that you really clearly articulate what that profile actually is, what's in there, and therefore what drives you in your career is really important, because that's, to your point, exactly how people are starting to search for candidates. It's far less about just posting an ad now and much more about posting an ad but also going out and proactively searching for candidates.
So what do Seek want to be? And an observation over the 12 years I've been in Australia is virtually had a monopoly right until recent years.
Absolutely.
So what do Seek
stand
for and want to be?
We see ourselves as being part of every placement, and it depends on whether we're talking about our candidates or our clients, our hirers, and our recruiters. But we ultimately want to help the businesses that we're working with succeed, and we want people to live more fulfilling lives if they're candidates.
So if you look at we've obviously spoken about the differences between, corporate and personal branding. So, would you weight one more than the others? And also, respectful of there's quite a lot of professional contractors in the room today who are effectively self-employed, right? So maybe you can talk us through a bit around some of that sort of stuff.
If you'd asked me this question probably 2 years ago, I would have said corporate branding is definitely the more important. I think as we've seen the rise of that new marketing, the personal brand is increasingly becoming more important and more crucial, whether it's in doing business or finding a job. And I think that is because the personal brand really does differentiate you, and it differentiates your brand.
Can you talk to us about your new brand campaign? And I think we might have another short video clip to play around.
Yes, and Ray's going to talk about this one.
I am indeed. So, company reviews, this is our new campaign. I don't know if you remember our campaign from last year. It was pretty serious. We kind of had changed our brand personality a wee bit, but we're back to old school Seek now, a bit fun, a bit quirky. In terms of the feedback that we've had so far about this campaign, everyone loves it, and it's really helped our product in terms of engagement with hirers. So it's all about company reviews, and it's a product similar to Glassdoor, so it's like the TripAdvisor, if you like, for companies. So it really showcases companies' EVP and gets some real feedback, real reviews from real employees. But have a look at this, and then we can talk further afterwards.
You are going to absolutely love working here, Nathan. It is super fabulous. Hey, it's bunny day today. My idea. How good is that? And next week, we've got Cat Day. Then Dog Day. We have teleconferences in the ball pit. Everyone gets a Segway. You're going to love that. And we have beach meetings. That's fantastic. It is the best place ever.
Seek company reviews. Real reviews by real employees.
Well, that's good. We got some laughs. I'm afraid at Seek we don't have memes in our speedos, but hey. Do we want to relate that back to personal and?
Yeah, so it actually really touches on your question and what we were talking about before, in terms of someone who you could very clearly see that he realised he'd got it wrong in there as he was sitting there in his speedos. I think for us it's really about how do we bring the product to life, and this is a key differentiator from a brand perspective. As Anna Marie just touched on, we went quite, and I don't know if any of you saw the brand campaign from last year. It was very serious. It was sort of the best way to trigger people's memories is it was kind of the reverse Benjamin Button as someone really got a lot older, and it was really starting to identify how short a period of time you actually have in your life that is actually allocated to your career. You feel like you work for 40 sometimes years in your career, but when you take out annual leave and you take out the fact that for probably 16 hours of the day you're maybe not at work, you actually don't have very long at all, and so you really need to make the most of that. So it was really about starting to get people thinking about change and get people thinking about, am I in the right career, and do I actually want to be doing what I'm doing now, and if not, I need to probably start looking on Seek. That was ideally what we wanted them to be doing. We're
pretty much out of time, but just in conclusion, if there was one biggest lesson that we can take out of today, what would you think it might be?
I would say do not underestimate the power of the personal brand. Yeah, don't underestimate the power of the personal brand in terms of you looking for a job. Don't underestimate in terms of the power it can bring to your company's brand as well. And really, really clearly understand this is what I stand for and this is what my personal brand represents and this is what I want to be known for. And the rest will follow as a result of that, in my opinion.
So thank you everyone for attending this morning. It's much appreciated as always. And thank you to Alex and Anne-Marie for a fantastic session.
Thank you.